Hey guys, this is Poohead189, and today I wanted to talk about a portion of Dragon Ball Z, or at least in the Z section of the manga, that is earnestly one of the most interesting sections in the entire series, but is extremely overlooked. It is during the Mini Trunks saga, or the sort of intermediary time between Frieza and the androids. And while I feel like Trunks' involvement has been talked about a bunch, I don't think I've made a dedicated video on it, but I've talked about it on multiple videos. There's not a lot of discourse or discussion on the meeting the Z Fighters have before Trunks arrives and after Trunks leaves. So those two meetings. And I felt we should shine a light on those sections and explore it a bit further. I feel like they deserve it. So this will be a two-part series dissecting the manga, and I might add in a few anecdotes from the anime as well. So I doubt a lot of you are as big of a Lord of the Rings fan as I am, but I've delved into a lot of Tolkien's Legendarium for a very long time, and in the late 2010s, in the past few years of this decade, there's been multiple sort of podcasts and specials and lectures on the various parts of Tolkien's Legendarium. You know, Corey Olsen, who's called the Tolkien Professor, he has his classes, and he teaches real classes. And then he also goes through Lord of the Rings Online, which I think is a good game, and sort of goes to different places and talks about the text of the book while he's playing it as like a fun little thing. And then there's the Prancing Pony podcast, and what they do is they go through the text slowly to analyze it like he does. And what I am going to do is somewhat similar to what they do. Unfortunately, Toriyama is not nearly as big brain as Tolkien, but going through the manga will let us better understand his characters. Now again, this will be a look and a dissection of the portion of the manga where the Z Fighters meet before King Cold and Frieza arrive, and then next time I will mostly focus on what happens after Trunks exit the narrative. So let's begin. The Mini Trunks arc begins fairly immediately, unlike in the anime. In the anime, while it does not explicitly state this, it feels as if over a day, perhaps multiple days, have passed between the Z Fighters sensing Frieza and his arrival. In the manga, however, he is very nearly at Earth by the time they sense his impending arrival. He might be hours away at most. We also get a good view of how characters sense power. Gohan is hit with this feeling of an approaching ki, and the exact second after, Krillin is calling him, and Krillin, being more of a veteran, he knows who it is, and he believes Gohan does too if he really thinks about it. Roshi too knows who it is, or at least senses a power, it appears. Perhaps Krillin and Roshi sensed it like half a minute before Gohan. Oddly enough, King Kai senses Frieza the same instant the Earthlings have. Perhaps it is because he was simply monitoring them, and then when he heard them, he realized they were right, that Frieza is approaching. It's also a possibility he is about to contact Goku. Meanwhile, Piccolo, Yamcha, and Vegeta sense Frieza approaching as well. Yamcha is uncertain because he had never felt Frieza's ki before, but Vegeta and Piccolo know it all too well. Chaozu and Tien feel it as well, but Tien is the one who can differentiate and find that it's not just one large power level, or not just Frieza's ki, but King Cold's as well. Now, he doesn't know who King Cold is, but he can sense two power levels. That is somewhat strange that Vegeta does not comment on King Cold, which means he probably doesn't sense King Cold at first, as it would be someone he would recognize and know the existence of, but it goes to showcase Tien's sort of heightened skill, and Vegeta having only learned how to sense an opponent's power without a scouter relatively recently. Even if he's never sensed King Cold's power before, since he was able to sense power, he still doesn't differentiate between two powers, so it seems only Tien does at the moment. Well, we don't know if Piccolo or Yamcha sensed two of them, though it appears Yamcha probably did not, likely because he was just in a social setting with Bulma and the others. We also can't ignore that Chaozu might have sensed both King Cold and Frieza as well with Tien. While he is not a powerhouse, Chaozu has received pretty much all of the specialized training Tien has. Now, Gohan immediately dons his Frieza Force battle armor and flies off and meets Krillin part of the way. Then we have Krillin the Goat, who sensed King Cold as well, though of course this is slightly later too. Gohan seemingly just noticed a short bit ago. Now Vegeta and Yamcha make it to the battlefield first, followed by Bulma and Puar, who apparently followed them. When questioned, Bulma explains that no matter where on Earth she is, it doesn't matter if Frieza's going to blow it up. Then, of course, Vegeta notices the other goat landing, being Tien, and clearly Vegeta's intimidated. I'm just kidding. But seriously, Tien and Chaozu arrive, and Tien begins to coerce Vegeta into a fight. Or at least treats Vegeta like any sane person would at that moment. It's quite strange because apparently Vegeta did not notice Tien approaching until he landed, and Tien did not know that Vegeta was still on Earth. While both could sense Frieza and King Cold, or at least both likely can sense both of them now, so perhaps on a planet with multiple people of similar powers, if you're not actively looking for someone, you just get the vague sense of power in certain directions. It's difficult to say. Now, Vegeta warns them the Frieza Force have scouters, so Yamcha and Tien needs to hide their strength. Vegeta is also facing when Piccolo lands, and mentions Piccolo is there and notices Piccolo already suppressing his strength, and Vegeta insults Tien and Yamcha by comparing them to Piccolo, which is likely him trying to get under their skin more than complimenting Piccolo, especially since later he tries to troll Piccolo and, infers that he's weak. Then Krillin and Gohan arrive, and you're reminded that they did not contact each other, meaning all the fighters. They all just showed up to fight, even if they were alone. Imagine if only Yamcha and Vegeta teamed up to fight Frieza and King Cold, and then just had Bulma and Puar there watching, or just Tien and Chaozu arrived, or only Gohan and Krillin, or just Piccolo alone. All of those scenarios would be pretty wild, I think. Then, of course, Frieza and King Cold arrive above them on their ship. Vegeta warns everyone to not fly to keep their powers down so the scouters don't passively detect them. Tien and Yamcha are stunned by Frieza's power level. And this is kind of strange because they could sense it far away, and the only way that it would matter more to them now is if Frieza is currently powering up. Although it could just be that they had a sense of a large power far away, but they didn't really grasp just how big it is up close. I guess it'd be sort of like seeing the Himalayas 500 miles away and being like, oh, I bet those are really big. And then when you're at the foot of it, you're like, holy shit. So it's probably the same thing. And then, of course, Gohan tells them that Frieza gets way stronger than this. I had friend of the channel Dave translate this panel to make certain that was in the original Japanese, and it's pretty much the same in the direct translation. Now, sometimes it really is pivotal to do a slow reading of the manga because it sheds some light on information you can really use to help reinforce what you think or even change your mind on certain arguments. Everyone saying that Frieza's power level is already huge, but Gohan stating he can become way stronger, goes to show that just as I have theorized for 20 years, Future Trunks does not kill Frieza at Frieza's or Mecha Frieza's full power. He kills Frieza quickly so he doesn't have to risk fighting him at full power. So we can maybe do some guesswork here. Now this is just me riffing with numbers, but let's say most of these Z fighters are between 1 and 4 million in strength currently, very strong compared to almost everyone else in the galaxy. However, Frieza, at maybe a quarter of his usual strength, might be around 40 million or maybe 45 million. I think that's probably a pretty accurate guesstimate of what we might be dealing with in terms of Mecha Frieza. And King Cold is very close to that power currently too, because no one differentiates between their powers. They just say there's two huge powers. Now, while I had friend of the channel Dave translate, I had friend of the channel Clearin double check something for me while I was at work. I knew that King Cold was very close to Mecha Frieza's strength, but slightly weaker. I had forgotten, though, what the source was for that. I didn't know if it was Toriyama saying it or the Daizenshu 7. Clearin found the exact passage, and I'll read it as follows, and it's from the Daizenshu 7. Cold the Great, King of the Universe. First appearance, Chapter 329. Special characteristics. Frieza's father. He is a shadowy presence in the organization, and nobody knows of his existence apart from his family and his direct subordinates, not even the Ginyu Special Squad. Though he's the head of the strongest family in the universe, he is somewhat inferior to Frieza. Now, I think him being a shadowy presence has been somewhat retconned recently, though it might likely be correct now, at least in the manga that we're currently reading, because Zarbon and Dodoria are now dead at this point in the story, and so are a lot of Frieza's forces, and it does say only somewhat inferior to Frieza, but we know they are close because, as I just said, no one in the manga differentiates between their powers. Speaking of Zarbon and Dodoria, it might be very close to comparing them in strength, at Dodoria being 22,000 and Zarbon being at 23,000, so they might be very close to each other like that. And if that is the case, and Frieza can become stronger, then so can King Cold, meaning he is almost certainly not at his final form. Anyway, Tien is amazed they fought someone as monstrous as Frieza, though if you want to be technical, once Frieza powered up to beyond his initial final form strength, they left pretty much all of the fighting with Goku. Meanwhile, Yamcha is having a small freakout, or I guess a moderate freakout, stating how both of them are behemoths, meaning King Cold and Frieza. Contrary to what some might think, I think Yamcha is holding himself together fairly well, considering this is his first experience with Frieza. Most people would simply run away screaming, and comparing him to Tien is kind of unfair. We know that Tien just has bigger balls than he should. He would face down King Piccolo, Nappa, Frieza, and Cell and Buu. And then Piccolo and Vegeta both state that it doesn't matter what they do when Yamcha's like, it's kind of suicide to fight him, because the world is about to end. And this is something else that the Z fighters that did not go to Namek aren't used to. Now, they're used to world-ending threats, but they aren't used to world-detonating threats. Imagine coming home from the afterlife with a power level of like 2 or 3 million, and not even once thinking you can obliterate the Earth if you really wanted to. Yamcha doesn't even think that way, and why would he? He's not a psychopath. He was already dead when Vegeta tried to blow up the world, something Vegeta has done to countless planets and billions of sentient people, so Vegeta knows about this, but Yamcha doesn't. And so half the people here have experience with death, but not the destruction of an entire planet. Yeah, they knew Namek blew up, but it's still hard to imagine if you weren't there or did not at least experience the tail end of that saga. Vegeta is very used to such things, like I just said, and is also very used to Frieza. And of course he tries to play it off by simply stating that this isn't only hopeless for all of them, but it's the end of the world. And I think it's a really cool panel. But even then you can kind of see a sweat drop on Vegeta's 5 head. He doesn't want to die either. It's only his Saiyan pride, and likely the fact that Goku stood his ground on Namek, that he doesn't fly away and steal a Capsule Corp spaceship. Although, then again, Vegeta has also died before. He's probably a little bit less freaked out about dying, even if he didn't retain his body at the time. He's still like, well, it's kind of a difference between, Yamcha has plans for his future. He knows what he wants. He wants to marry. He wants to maybe have kids. He wants to keep fighting. This isn't when he's given up fighting. But at the same time, he has more sort of like, I guess, wholesome goals, whereas Vegeta's sort of aimless. So he just kind of wants to see Goku again so he can either fight him or become a Super Saiyan himself. Yeah, it kind of showcases the difference between their expectations for the future. And plus, Saiyans also have muted sort of emotions too. They can face death far easier, even if Vegeta kind of did freak out multiple times on Namek. Although that also goes to show how pivotal Frieza was for his backstory. That's not Vegeta being like a pussy. I think it's just that Frieza really shakes him up. In fact, everyone who had faced Frieza already has had either a mini freakout like Piccolo, or multiple major freakouts like Vegeta and to a lesser extent Krillin. This really goes to show just how insane Frieza is during 2 to 3 sagas of the whole manga, depending on what you count as sagas. And while I said we would stop before the Trunks-Frieza fight, I did want to highlight a little bit of Frieza and King Cold landing. King Cold had not even bothered about wondering what would happen to the Earthlings until they stepped out, but knew Frieza wasn't just going to blow up the planet, or they would not have bothered to land, and so he asks if Frieza is going to wait the 3 hours for Goku. So I guess they've already calculated when Goku would get there with their computers. Frieza says yes, but in the meantime, he will eradicate all of the Earthlings. Now, we don't know exactly what he means here. He could mean he is going to kill every man, woman, and child in 3 hours on Earth without blowing up the Earth, and that seems somewhat far-fetched unless he just makes certain to glass thousands of miles along the planet's surface at a time. It is possible he means he is going to hunt down and kill all of Goku's friends, which would be something he would be inclined to do anyway, even if they had not showed up. It's difficult to say. King Cold does state he doesn't care about the Earth's inhabitants. He just wants to kill the Super Saiyan so they have undisputed hegemony over the entire universe. Or the Cold clan does. Frieza states together the two of them can kill Goku no problem, but he can probably do it all alone himself, since he is far more powerful than he was. So this means that Mecha Frieza is a step or two above Namek Saga Super Saiyan Goku, and King Cold is most likely stronger as well, at least at full power. And this again goes to show just how much of a monster Yardrat Goku is. If he can show up and kill Mecha Frieza and King Cold at the same time, likely at full power, like it's no big deal. It's very crazy. However, it's at this moment that Trunks shows up, and I think I'll leave it now until part 2 comes out, which will be after Trunks leaves. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this little breakdown. I think it's an extremely overlooked part of the series that needed some dissection. If you think I deserve it, please like, share, and subscribe, and I always welcome your comments, and I will see you next time. Oh yeah, and here's some Fred Durst.